here's our last hexagon. And it connects to the point we made at the beginning. It's important that this was statewide. And another important piece here is there was space for local adaptation. And I heard that at one of the tables I was at, how it never felt like we were giving, like, here's the script. It was, here's tools and how to adapt them to your context. So here's a trap, and we surfaced this trap when we pitched the idea of working together on 23H. Okay, this was the trap we pitched. This is a trap we fall into, right? We assume, oh, well, we just got to figure it out by ourselves over here in our corner of the state. And something different we did here is we really worked together to leverage resources, to develop shared vision, to problem solve. It's important because this work is such a big shift that I guarantee no school district or ISD can do it on their own. Rusty showed you this slide before, and you can just see it in the yearbook. The number of people involved in this work from across the state is really powerful. And what I want to emphasize, and you can see it in the yearbook also, is these contexts were really different. One of the tables I was just at, the EMS was saying, the school I had to work at didn't even know I was coming, right? That's one end. Versus other EMSs were in contexts where they had long-standing relationships with those schools. Those are really different contexts to do this work in, right? If you look through, you also see there's a range of what the EMS's contract time was. What it means to be less than half-time EMS versus a full-time EMS, that's pretty different. There's a range of 6 teachers to 56 teachers that EMSs are supporting. Those are really different contexts. There's really different monthly time for PD with teachers across these different districts. What I saw in the survey we collected from EMSs is a range from 45 minutes to 6 hours, okay? Those are really different spaces to work within. My point is, there's no one recipe that we could give Michigan for how to improve math instruction, but what we can do is develop shared tools and learning spaces to support us all to develop ways to adapt what matters to our unique context. And that's what we did in this work. And that's really important to emphasize because some people might assume that this is, oh, they're going to give me a script of something I have to do. Or I can't do that because I don't have a full-time EMS. We can adapt what we're doing to every context. And that really matters. So here's our full hexagons. Again, I want that burned in your head. This is a tool for us to tell our story about what mattered, about what we did this year. Right now, I'm going to make the EMSs get up again. EMSs, will you go find somewhere around the room? Will you stand up, go stand somewhere around the room. Just pick a spot. And what you may have noticed already is the EMSs all have buttons on, and they encourage you to ask them about some piece of the work. So, would everyone else get up? You're going to need to be in groups of kind of 2 to 3, 1 to 2 maybe. Go talk to an EMS about their button. Okay, I have the terrible job of interrupting you again. If you could come find your seat. Okay. All right. I only got to join one group, but I could tell from the volume that all the other conversations were as exciting as my conversation was. Yeah, I again wish we could just hear everyone's stories. But we're going to actually move into a section that we've kind of been dabbling in already. Maybe. Oh. So again, this was the framework for our story today, right? We've been talking about how we did something really different and innovative. How we designed it matters. And it's been hard, I don't know if you noticed this, to not move into impact. I know the little conversation I was just in moved right into impact, okay? We're going to move fully there. We're going to hear about the impact of this work from a few different angles. So one angle, is connected to this lens of how we have to change how we're doing our job as leaders if anything's going to change. So I want to start there as we think about impacts. So let's talk at our tables this time. If you were involved in this work in any way, so I know we have teachers, we have leaders at different levels. If you were involved in this work in any way, can you share at your tables, how are you thinking about your job in a different way now than you were a year ago? What, if any, impact has this year had on the way you think about your role? That's the impact we're focusing on right now. Go ahead and chat at your tables. Okay. I have the worst job right now of cutting off important conversations. But I am going to do it. You'll get more time to talk soon. What we're going to do now is bring up two of our leaders. Danielle and Sarah from Muskegon are going to share a little bit about the impacts they've seen in their context.
Good afternoon, everybody. I don't see any yawning or sleepy faces yet, so we must be still really invigorated about the conversation. So that's exciting for Sarah and I to come in at 3:15 in the afternoon on a beautiful day. So I'm Danielle Vascuel. I am the mathematics consultant for the Muskegon Area ISD, and I have had the privilege of working alongside two separate kind of entities that have put this together to kind of help impact our system. So as the math consultant, I have had the privilege to work with the task force in thinking about and really learning about how this project has come to light and all of the thinking and behind the scenes stuff that we're using to build the system. And then I've also had the privilege to bring on, within the grant, our EMS and work alongside a district that I would say, can someone click to the next slide? Has helped us live into, and I chose this quote because it really is an emphasis on a shared vision. And this district had come together and decided, based on literacy work that came before, to build a vision for their system that didn't just live in one space. And so I'll just give you a second to read that. It's from Simon Sinek. So we know when we work within an elementary building, we have teachers who are not just teaching literacy and not just teaching mathematics, and we can end up kind of being like these two ships in the night that are just kind of sailing side by side. And luckily, the district that we brought on with us as partners really had an idea that they didn't want that to happen, and they didn't have those blinders on, and they really opened up their vision to build like this shared idea of what teaching and learning for Orchard View students was supposed to be like, and what they wanted their Orchard View teachers to feel like every day in their classrooms. So, thank you. I'm going to just talk about a couple highlights that we've had to really just celebrate all year long. And so the first is this idea of establishing a shared vision. So we, from the beginning, and I'll kind of talk into the second one, the support of the building principals was probably one of the most key pieces of getting the work in our district to just take off. So they came last year and they already were really living into, we want to bring this shared vision of what math instruction should look like, K-5, to life. And so when we started the project, they already were really excited about building a math leadership team, having a common vision about instruction, bringing in and like living into some shared resources that their teachers could talk into. And so we spent a lot of time, we surveyed staff, we got information from the math leadership team. What do we want teaching and learning in mathematics to look like and sound like? And we used our essentials as a third point to reference, like, how do we think this is already present and what do we want to make changes in? And they developed a vision statement about math instruction. And they've shared that with their staff and they're living into that every single day. And so when we talk about the building principles, they really are a key catalyst in making this work, because every day they are out publicly supporting and working alongside their teachers as partners. So they are doing the learning with them, they are asking them what they need, they are a part of the leadership team, and they are just working like shoulder to shoulder to bring this work to life. And I think that that as a system has made the work kind of come in and be supportive of every single day that the teachers have to make decisions, and every single day that things get difficult, that they know that their administrators are right there to support them, and they have that same vision of what they want for math instruction. The other key thing that has happened with this is that at Orchard View, they have two buildings. They have a K-1 building, an early elementary, and they have a 2-5 building. And prior to this work, those two buildings did not do much collaboration at all. They kind of worked separately. Work that was happening at the K-1 level did not transfer to the 2-5 level. And they had conversations, but this work has brought those buildings into almost, if you put them in one building, it wouldn't be weird, because they would live into the same expectations. They would have the same shared language about what they're looking for with their kids and what they're going to do with their students and the strategies. The leadership team has included staff from both buildings, so we have grade level representation. We also have an interventionist or a supervisor of intervention Title I that has been brought on, and she has been a part of this early math work for a really long time. And so that cross-building collaboration that the project has allowed, and that the principals in our EMS have worked so hard for, is really like one of the key highlights, I think, for this year, and that's going to keep the momentum moving forward outside of just this first year. At one point, the EMSs were asked to do some data collection, and you may have been an EMS asked by your task force member to collect some data, and we thank you so much, because it's really helping us learn as a task force. But during that, we wanted to have the math leadership team go in and do some observations. And our district said, we kind of did these literacy tours to go into all of our classrooms and gather some data. I want to do the same thing for math. And so they did the same thing from literacy, and they did the math tours, and our leadership team visited every single classroom. We had a look-fors document, and we collected that data and had great conversation about what we were seeing across the board, because a couple of their other goals were to create some guaranteed components of the math instructional block. Like, what is it gonna look like if I were to go into an instructional block in every single one of my classrooms? What am I gonna see? What am I gonna hear? What are kids gonna be doing? What are teachers gonna be doing? And having some of those components that were like non-negotiable, in addition to creating an assessment plan. What are we gonna use in our resource? What are we gonna think about to make decisions about kids learning? And all of that really stemmed from the learning that Lisa brought as an EMS and the support of the building principals in working really hard to bring this idea of shifting math and shifting into a supportive system to life. And so I'm going to have Sarah talk a little bit about a couple of the lessons that we're learning.
Awesome. I'm Sarah Coleman, and I have the pleasure of working with Danielle, and I occasionally get to work with the math task force as well. And I think one of the first things that I've learned from them that was really, really valuable was when Allison, I think it was last year, was really talking about the idea of like how many different things in the system impact a teacher. And so in a way for us, we were really lucky when we went into Orchard View. that they were already engaging in some of this work with their literacy team and said, how can we make the impact of having our systems look similar for the teachers who were involved between their mathematics and their literacy? And it reminds me of how Allison always talks about the roles, the events, the routines, and the tools. What pieces of those can we find consistency between the work happening in mathematics and literacy? So for the elementary teacher, there's consistency in what they're using and what good instruction looks like. And so that seemed to be like a really important part of building that, and we're using that as we're looking forward to next year to think about where is this person, if we're expanding the work, what will it look like in that new system, and how do we ensure some of those pieces are similar? And I think that's really important. I think another thing we were really lucky, when we decided like Orchard View was a great candidate for 23H, Orchard View had already been talking about this being their next step. They had established a literacy team and a leadership team, and their administration was saying to us, we're really thinking about what we need to do with mathematics. And I think that put us in a really good spot to get, this work was very much wanted and welcome in the district, and it was like that right time. And so we're really thinking about that as well as we're looking at where we expand this work, like where are other places we've really heard, like this is the right next step, and that's really exciting. And then I think the other really important lesson that we learned, our EMS is Lisa. You have to wave. Lisa is really amazing. We were so lucky to hire her. She was actually, we got her as a teacher on loan from a district for the year. And halfway through the year, Orchard View, very wisely, hired her as part of their administration team. And so, yep, we all had changes like that, right? But we had to really do a little pivoting so we could make that work and make that work still be a really important and embedded part in the district. And part of what made that happen and still successful was that Lisa was really tied into our team at the ISD. So she and Danielle have this really deep relationship. They've spent a lot of time together, and it allowed Danielle to like walk into some of those spaces that Lisa may have had time to do if she was a full-time EMS, but did not when she was part-time as an assistant principal. And so that's something that I think became really foundational for our success, is making sure that the work is connected and like well understood from our level at the ISD. I'm going to hand it back to you because you have to say some closing words.
I didn't practice those bullet points. So I think a big takeaway, and I do want to name Heather and Elise and Megan. Will you also raise your hand? So they are the, I know moving into next year, there is going to be a big emphasis, and we've heard it in both spaces, to really focus in on building principal leadership and skills and bringing them along. But Heather and Elise and Megan and our EMS, who's half-time assistant principal, these are the building administrators in those two buildings, and they are here because this work could not have happened in a way that the teachers are feeling good and feeling like they have momentum if they were not as supportive of this work as they are. And I think that it's a great place to highlight because they don't get a lot of accolades because you're doing really good work every single day. And so, yeah. And we look forward to next year because I think that momentum is going to keep going and the math leadership team is flourishing and we are building connections. Someone named about dialogue and discourse and thinking that they were able to take something they did in Think, Pair, Share and use it in another space. And we're thinking really hard about bridging that gap for our teachers and how do we kind of do the high quality strategies, like even just like what does it look like to have discourse in literacy and math and in science and in social studies, because we do teach science and social studies too in an elementary classroom, right? So I'm excited and I appreciate all of their work because they've really supported the whole system and not just going into a classroom and doing good things in one place, but across the building. So thank you, guys.
Okay, so an important layer of impact, and if we put our trajectory onto this, right, there is some internalization in that context of leaders have to work together differently. that is something that if this work went away, what I'm hearing is you all would continue to work differently together, okay? That's a great example of an internalized, this is no longer you're working together because someone's telling you to work together, okay? That's a really important layer of the impact to think about, and especially as we move towards thinking about how do we sustain this work long term. Now we're going to hear from Amy about how she thinks about impact.
Okay. So my team and I, Mallory and Kaylin, have been out in classrooms, not quite all over the state, but in many, many places, videotaping the great work teachers are doing. And so I'm going to share a little bit of that here. But before I do that, I'm going to present a counterexample of what we're moving away from, because I think it's important to think about what we're leaving and what we're moving toward. And I'll just say I found this example on YouTube. It's like 15 years old, so I'm sure the teacher has retired. But I also want to say it's not about a not good teacher. This video was actually put up by the district as an example of great practice. So she was doing exactly what her district expected her to do. And I think you'll see she has a really warm and lovely relationship with the children. Like, it is the kind of joyful space I hoped we would provide. But we're also seeing the kind of pedagogy that's not creating great opportunities for kids to engage in mathematical thinking. So I want to present that first as a contrast before showing you what teachers in Michigan are now trying to do. Oh, and just to help you, it's a kindergarten pattern lesson. Go ahead.
That's right. Now, everyone has different kinds of foods on Thanksgiving. These are just a couple of examples. Up here, I've got some different foods that we just named. Be my echo as I say the names of these foods. Ready? Turkey. Turkey. Mashed potatoes. Mashed potatoes. Pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie. Stuffing. Stuffing. Broccoli. Broccoli. Cranberries. Cranberries. Carrots. Carrots. Okay. I'm going to start by making a simple pattern. And I'm going to see if anyone can guess the last three pictures of our pattern. Who could come up to the smartboard, touch the picture, and drag it into the boxes to complete the pattern? Who thinks they can give it a try? Ava, you want to give it a try? Ready? Pumpkin pie, broccoli, broccoli. Pumpkin pie, broccoli, broccoli. Now this kind of pattern, I'm going to write the name of this pattern underneath each picture. Instead of using red, I don't think red would show up on brown very good. I'm going to use a white so that will show it better. So we've got A, B, B. A, B, B. Okay. We're going to try another one.
All right, and so then we do that again. So again, this teacher is lovely. She's a lovely human being. And I'm sure she's doing exactly what she's asked to be doing. But in these moments, we saw only one child really engage with patterning, right? And she opens this lesson in this way of saying, will you be my echo? And I'll say, like, different people might react to that differently, but I find that absolutely chilling. Just the idea that we are trying to turn children into our echoes, right? So much of this is, I say this, you repeat after me. I say this, you repeat after me. And I can see this observation, if it were an observation, just getting nothing but like glowing feedback from the administrator, right? We're all the children on task. Like, we can't even see the children, but we probably assume they are. Why? Because they were quiet, because they were raising their hands, right? But that's not a good sign of mathematical learning. That is a sign that like children are compliant, which like I know is what some people want from children, but that is not actually like what we're trying to do as for math learners. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is show a video, And this is from our data this spring, so it is not polished. There aren't closed captions on this yet. I just literally went into 4 or 5 classrooms and pulled out examples of practice happening in Michigan this year. And what I want you to think about as you watch it, and like you're not going to get a good sense of what the lesson is. You're just going to see kids engaging. But what do we see that is different from what we saw here? What are the changes, like the impact that we're seeing teachers making in classrooms? And we can jump to that next video.
What is 10 before 220 and what is 10 after 220? No, 230. 230. So, the one before 220 and then the one after 220.
Thank you, Rowan. Thank you, Xavier. I'm sorry, Riley. Thank you, Riley. Thank you, Xavier. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you, Alexia. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
So we're going to do 210, the jump before. So
That's the biggest pie in the universe. And then I just want to take that. No, you can't put that unless someone's staring from you. Hey guys, are you done here? I think so. I am.
It was like when she owns the 20s, they get the equal amount. She gets 10. She gets 10 of each. She gets 10 of each. They get 10 of each. I wrote that. That means they get 10. No, they get 20. How many threes can you get out of 20? I'm just 6.
Right, but you're not
But
asking if they get the same. How many minutes?
which would be 6 with a remainder of 2. What she gets. It's 10. So does that mean they both get 20? She has.
Brooklyn and Summer, can I share what you guys have been doing on your board?
Okay.
Thank you. So let's go back to what we did, and remember we actually did 2 when we left because this was our Thursday. We had Good Friday off, so take a look at what we saw. And again, if you need to look at the information that we've been tracking, give you about 10 seconds to think. We're going to think first, Miss Addison. Think first, Azariah. All right, go ahead and do that turn and try.
Okay, real quick, turn to your tables and spend 1 minute talking about what is different in that second video than in the first one. Okay, I'm going to bring us back together. And in the whole group, I don't actually want to talk about what was different. I'm going to assume that you could see that and you talked about it. In the whole group, what I would like to spend my last 2 minutes doing is hearing, what do we think teachers need to hear from math leaders and building leaders and district leaders in order to be brave enough to move their practice in that direction? And maybe equally importantly, what do they need to not hear?
They need to be able to hear that noise is okay.
So much feedback about whether children are quiet or still. And if this is what we want classrooms to look like and sound like, that has to stop now.
I think teachers need to be able to hear that there's more than one way to do things, and that they might be the leader of that classroom, but that doesn't mean that that class should not be collaborating all together when they're coming up with reasons.
Yeah, perfect. And when we go in to observe teachers, we also need to not think, oh, they're not teaching if the children are all playing games on the floor, right? Like, that is great work that the teacher is doing. We don't come back later.
It needs to be fun.
For both teachers and kids, right? That, like, we are trying to have fun in our classrooms right now.
Kids moving around and it being a little messy, and it's okay.
Yeah. Kids have bodies and they will use them. It's okay.
So what I've learned is, I've been teaching for 34 years. The kids are supposed to be quiet, not say anything. That last group of kids, that's my kids now. There's a big difference. They're going to talk, whether it's about academics or not. So what I've learned from Megan, and with them talking to each other about math, is now when it's time for me to read them a story and they're at the carpet, they're going to be talking, right? Now they have to, will you discuss what genre you think I'm going to read today? Like, I'm using what I'm learning from Megan in so many different ways. And they want to sit and talk to each other about what they think. So genre they talk about, or I give them some kind of thing to think about when we're getting ready for social studies. And moving and transitioning, they're going to talk anyhow, so give them some academics to talk about.
How fabulous to have you here, and I don't think I could wrap up better than that. Thank you.
Very nice, thank you.
Okay, so we could keep talking about the impacts. I want to just all pull out a device right now. Let's collectively write down what impacts of this work stand out to you most. We've heard a whole bunch of range of different impacts. They all really matter. What's really resonating with you right now? What do you want to go and tell someone else about tomorrow? Trish did put tissues at your table if you need them. So a challenge I would give you is think of someone you're going to tell tomorrow who is maybe not that familiar with this work. What story of impact might you tell them? How might you disrupt the narrative a lot of people have that the only impact that matters is test scores? Okay. So we've been telling this story. We've reached the very end of our story, which is this: we've learned a lot. We're still learning, and we're really, 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 really not done yet. Like, this is just beginning. So we want to spend a moment on what have we learned about designing systems to support this work? Because that is going to be crucial if we're going to keep going. So we've heard a few things I just want to name. The principle really, 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 really matters. That's part of our plan for next year, is how do we bring principles in more, okay? We've heard other things around collaboration. Here's what I would love any leaders in the room right now who are part of this work. Is there something that stands out to you? It could be for any of these questions, but especially if you have something that you need to say out loud about what you desperately, definitely need next year to support this work, please put it out in the room so that we're giving voice to that.
I'm thinking about a lot, so if this isn't as coherent as I would like it to be, please know it's off the cuff. So many things about this project and the system that I have encountered is transformative, to say the least. We have such amazing connection between our ISD, which is so clear when I see how many ISD representatives we have on the early math task force. I am so lucky to have my ISD representative, who unfortunately couldn't be here, carrying Allison's work over into our district and ISD work. So all of these pieces, the coherence map, the trajectory, the roles, the tools, the events, those are things that not only am I supporting in my district, but my county is doing. So when my teachers go places, they hear and see the same work we are doing in this room. When I get to go back and tell my team, we have MDE here, we have MAISA here, we have EMS here, we have task force here, they feel as though they are valued, that they are worth the work and the effort, just like we say our kids are. So that has really transformed how my teachers have engaged with me. We had a teacher who was going to retire this year, and for many reasons, but I'm going to choose to believe this was the biggest. She said, I've never taught math as well. I've never enjoyed teaching math as well as this year. And that was, it's what pushes me along. It's what reminds me that we can do hard things, and 25 years of teaching doesn't have to be the reason you don't want to try.
I have two things real quick. One, the Leader Network, those meetings at 8 o'clock are a real challenge because that is student drop-off time in the busiest time of the day, so it's a real barrier to get onto those meetings, which I have found valuable on the times I've been able to make it work. So I think bringing more leaders in by making that at a time that works a little bit better for teacher, leader, and principals to attend those. But the other thing is, and I had a lot of these discussions with teachers this year, you know, you're in a classroom and they're trying these new things and maybe they're not going so well. And as teachers, there's a lot of shame and embarrassment that comes from that. And I had to talk to a few of my teachers this year about just celebrating, like, you know what, you took a huge risk today, and did it go the way you wanted it to go? Maybe not, but what was good and what can you do different next time? And how can we train the kids to do this better? How can we build their independence? This is new. And when you ask second graders or kindergartners to have discussion and work independently for the first 20 times, it's not going to go well. But celebrating that teachers are taking those risks and telling other people about, even when it wasn't perfect, like, wow, I was in a classroom today and this teacher was, these kids were engaging and they had their math tools out and they were playing games, and not talking about the things that didn't go well, but celebrating that risk taking. Because as teachers, that's scary, especially when people are watching.
I just have two things I wanted to share about the first question. I'm Chris, I'm a curriculum director. The first was something that really resonated with me was Allison's resistance to compliance and internalization. And I saw a video, Allison, of you talking about how you were in resistance at some point. And for me, that meant giving people more patience, being more patient with people who are at that beginning stage, and not expecting them to do something out of compliance right away and letting them have that freedom. And then the other was just about how coherent this whole system was. I think at first I looked at it like an indictment on my leadership when a teacher said, "We've never had this much PD about 20 minutes." I was like, geez, like we missed the boat on literacy, and now we have a new math curriculum we're going to implement, and how can I do as well with that as they just had for 20 minutes. They're looking at me like, what's all this PD for 20 minutes for? We've never had that before. And I was like, oh boy, I really blew it. So for me personally, like I'm looking at this whole structure and thinking about how can I rebuild and continue to build on this in lots of other areas throughout the district.
So I'm Jenny, I'm in EMS, and I've kind of seen my journey and how I support the teachers over the year. You wouldn't think this would be a new learning for me come February or March, but my teachers want to learn and talk about math teaching and learning. Like almost every other building in here, we got a number of corner materials in the middle of September. We're trying to start in October, so it was initially, I'll be honest, we weren't doing as much of the shared learning as we wanted to. We were focused on getting Number Corner going and how do I walk them through this and how do we find time to prep, and I think we needed to at the time because that's where they were feeling that sense of urgency. But when we started to get that going and we made the time through our leadership team to sit down and do that shared learning, I was surprised at how hungry they were for that, and they've been saying over and over, we want more of this. We like that we talked about Think, Pair, Share and came in and looked at it in our classrooms and kept doing it. We like that we talked about these questioning stems and the paraphrasing, and we want to keep doing something every month. Let's keep going. And that was just really amazing for me.
Thank you for sharing your amazing stories, for sharing your amazing examples. Jess and I are going to share a few learnings from the early math team. And actually, you've all named these for us already. They've come out in your stories. They've come out at your tables. They've come out in your small conversations. We've learned a lot. This year, when we think about challenges, starting with funding in October, that was a challenge. Right? But you all said, we believe in this work. We're behind you. We're going to jump on board. So thank you to the GELN members who said yes and then found the districts to support within this project. Our work's not done yet, though. So we're going to share 3 different ideas that we've learned that we're moving forward into next year. The first one names that teachers need a supportive environment.
And EMSs, you all have been naming this all day today, but it's our job as leaders to make sure that teachers have the time and space to get messy with one another and have the opportunity to open their doors, to see us getting messy as leaders, to get messy with their EMS and the other teachers in the district.
Yes, when we open our classroom doors and welcome others into our spaces, It's an opportunity for us to showcase and celebrate the messiness. Shifting that practice is really important. Secondly, we learned that we need to enact these existing roles that are already in place differently. If we want something different for our children, then everyone in this room has to do something different. All of us. We all have to do something different. We have to think about our roles different. We have to think about the routines that we do in our classrooms different. We have to think about the ways that we're engaging educators in learning different, all of us.
Yeah. What are the ways that you're considering getting messy after today, and what spaces are you creating for educators and leaders within your systems to continue getting messy?
And then finally, we are better together. Creating a system that is statewide, that supports shifts in early math in the ways in which we did this year is different. But we could not have done this without all of us working together.
In addition to that, we hope that teachers deprivatize their practice by opening doors to our early math specialists, and we hope the same for districts with the local ISDs. We're better as a whole unit.
Okay, there we go. We are quickly reaching the very end of our time. So here's the story we've been telling today. And I really want to emphasize how we tell this story matters. So I hope today you're leaving armed with some ideas about how you might tell this story as you go back into your context so that we can advocate for what we know really matters for these learning contexts to be different for all of us, so that again, this is about our kids, so that the kids in our Michigan classrooms can start to experience what we all want of these joyful, connected spaces, right? This is really hard work for grown-ups, but it's really, really worth it for kids to experience something different. So I just want to highlight one thing that's going to be part of our learning in this next year. We're going to really be digging into what does it mean to scale this work, and that requires us really defining what scale means. Often, scale is used to talk about numbers of things, right? So all Michigan elementary schools will purchase number corner. That could be one way we think about scale. Or more ISDs will have full-time EMSs, or 80% of teachers will participate in learning labs. These are ways we could think about scale. What I want to emphasize about this definition here, and we're going to dig into it a lot more this coming year because it really matters, is that word how. How a large number of users engage with an innovation. It's not just, is everyone doing the math essentials, but how are they doing them? And that's where I think we have these tools to specify the how, but we can't lose track of the how. And the how matters for kids, it matters for teachers, and it matters for all of the different levels of leadership we have designing learning environments for our teachers and kids, okay? So that's the next step, is how do we spread the how, not just the things. Rusty, do you want to close us off here? And this is going to be future learning. I'm going to zoom through right now because we're running out of time. Come to Institute.
Can we have a round of applause for Allison? Thank you for leading us in new ways. How about our EMSs? Can we have a round of applause for them as well? We haven't said much about them yet, but they deserve a round of applause as well. They pour their heart, soul, and many other things into this work. Sonia, raise your hand. I know you didn't love that. Jess and Trish. Y'all, they do the work every single day, and it's fantastic. So appreciate them. ISD leaders, thank you. MDE, thank you for being here and showing up. MAISA leaders, we appreciate you. Local district leaders, we appreciate you as well. The challenges and obstacles that we'll run into are very, very long. And that's okay, because we can do hard things. It's important work that all of us have started, and it's important that we continue, because there is this other version of math that is important and inviting for all of our kids in Michigan. This is about our children, mine, those crazy ones, and all of the ones who you're picturing now. This work in 23H has started to push us out of that red, messy circle of continuing to do the same things and enact roles in the same ways. Our journey is starting to turn green and leading to a new destination. When we leave here today, it's important that we share our story, be creative in crafting the system. We heard so many examples of that. And advocate, advocate, advocate for this work to continue, because it matters, it's making an impact, and it's making a difference. We have learned a lot, and we're still learning. Next year will look different, I promise, because we're not done yet. Thank you all.